Hello, everybody. Ian Barkin here. Welcome back to yet another episode of OneTAKE live, where I come at you from my home in sunny, although soon to be very stormy, Tampa, Florida. And OneTAKE, for those who are not familiar, is a chance for me, somewhat selfishly, to talk to visionaries, leaders, academics, game changers, entrepreneurs across the world in topics around the futures of work, life, and culture, and have had a lot of great shows on all of those topics. So hopefully, if you haven't seen them, check them out on sykes.com/OneTAKE. Before I get started, want to just wish everyone health, safety, and livelihood. Hope everyone is doing okay in these continuing crazy and uncertain times. We are trying to figure out what to do with our kids in school. And if you do have school-age kids, I know that's not easy at the moment. Also, if you find yourself looking for work, Sykes is always hiring, so please do check out jobs.sykes.com, jobs.sykes.com. We've got a lot of great options. We have a really robust work-at-home program. We've got team members all over the planet, frankly, that are working from home and able to work with leading brands and really do some great work creating great experiences. So do check that out. Now, this show's a little meta, and I'm going to set us up for a second, and then I'm going to welcome our guest. So for those of you who do watch OneTAKE, hopefully you've also seen we're sort of building a media empire here. We've got other A Sykes production shows. We have OneTAKE, which is mine and has been. We just had a new show start last week called Career Talks with Orlando Haynes. And Orlando runs talent acquisition for one of our delivery centers and has incredible experience in talent acquisition and attraction and recruiting, and then personally your career development and skill development. And we also have a third show with AJ Hanna. AJ Hanna runs Ask AJ, in which he talks about usually digital transformation and really focused now on healthcare. So anyway, so we've got this media empire. So this show's a selfish one because I am thrilled to welcome my next guest, Connor Dube, to the show. Connor, welcome to OneTAKE.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you having me. Your intro is so cool. So much cooler than mine. I need to step my game up.
Thank you. We're playing with the music. You notice there was like two musics that went little like kind of synth calm to like horns funky, and we'll figure it out. We got to like put this out for a vote. But thank you. So I'm going to set, speaking of intros and setting up, I'm going to set you up for a moment and talk about who you are. Because again, this is sort of a selfish pleasure in so much as I love this medium. I really do like, telling stories. I love the chance to get out to a lot of people, to be animated and passionate about things. And you and I ran into each other a few months ago. I've had the absolute privilege of being a guest on your show, which I'll mention in a second. But you are just I guess a digital native, social native. You're good at this. You're passionate at this, and you've also got some formal titles. So I'll give those too. So for those who don't know him, Connor Dube was the founder of what's called B2B Mentors, and you're the director of sales and marketing at Active Blogs, and you effectively are everything I try to be, which is an engaging, articulate communicator, storyteller, content creator, and you help other people to do the same. Is that fair? And what am I missing?
It's all fair. No, it's awesome, exciting. I'm so great. First off, I'm grateful for you having me here. This is a blast. Obviously, we had some great conversations. I love nerding out anything, digital sales, marketing, and all that good stuff. And I'm super grateful that I grew up just in the time that I was, the era that I was. Mm-hmm. My background and everything definitely is a big contributor to what's kind of built me to where I am today, and how I'm able to really help people, even though I'm kind of, younger, and a lot of my peers are maybe even still working restaurant jobs and all this good stuff. Here I am consulting advising CEOs of, $100 million organizations and their marketing teams and all that good stuff. But I'm just passionate about it. I love it. I guess I'll give a little bit of background if that helps
Please.
at all, because I think
Yeah,
that
absolutely. No,
in me interviewing and doing podcasts and stuff, everyone is unique. Everyone is so different. And I came from, I actually grew up here in Fort Collins, Colorado, born and raised. And I started my first business at the age of 7. I was always very passionate about giving back to people. And then 9/11, 2001 hit, Twin Towers went down. I wanted a way to give back. So I actually raised funds. I painted, I took rocks from my neighbors in my parents' yard. I actually snatched rocks from their yard and I painted them with patriotic symbols and I sold them at a motorcycle rally, and I raised funds and I donated them all away. So that was my dive into entrepreneurship. And I also like to say that was my dive into like channel sales and understanding channel sales and kind of almost like B2B distribution at a young age. And I've always, been interested in business and marketing and sales, started landscaping companies, yard work. I've worked in restaurants. I've started nonprofits over the years. When I was 13, I really knew that I wanted to do just instinctively, like really big things with my life. Like I didn't want to live the average. So I really started studying successful people at a very young age, reading books, studying history, studying historical figures. And I'd grown up in the era of social media, which kind of tied into a lot of that background. Now, over the years, I actually I went to school for marketing here at Metro State University. And when I was working my way through college, I actually did door-to-door sales for 2.5 years. So it was like a total brutal crash course through communication and sales and marketing and getting attention. And that's kind of, my unique background that's led me to, I guess, where I'm at today, among a handful of other things.
That's outstanding. So before we delve into that for a moment, I just want to remind all of our guests, please, as always in a live stream, share your name, share where you're joining us from, and share questions. I'm sure you have them about the art of this craft. And I can think of no better person to ask than Connor as far as any of the questions you've got about whether you should be starting blogs or podcasts or vodcasts or what have you. So let's get those coming in as we go. Hello, AJ. Hello, Dr. Scott.
See my friend, Dr. Scott.
I love that background. There are people who just know in their bones. They just have a DNA as an entrepreneur, as a hustler from the youngest of ages. And I love that you were astute enough to see that you wanted to, as a guest I had a few months ago said, make a dent in the universe. You wanted to make a difference. You wanted to leave a legacy, if you will. So you did that from childhood on. The only issue I have with you is that you're so much better dressed than I am. But other than that, we'll leave that aside for a moment.
I told you before, I had to compete with the good looks, so I had to just get it up a little, dress it up a little bit to compete here. This
is one of the reasons Connor's on the show, is just because he's so incredibly, blind with such bad eyesight, but he's complimentary at the same time. So that's very nice of him. So snazzy dresser, but also.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is I think also a lot of generation, I dress like this pretty regularly and try to look well. I went down the jeans and t-shirt path and everything, and it's very popular for people to do that. Yep. But I think it brings the next level to your brand when you do add that. So actually I think it was 2 years ago, I'm going to wear a sports coat every single day I'm in business and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And as a younger millennial who's trying to build their name and build their career and all that good stuff, man, I can only speak to the opportunities I've had. Yeah. Just from looking well.
That's great. Yeah. It's funny because what I didn't do, but you did it for me nicely, was to point out that you were a younger individual who's precocious and has achieved a lot for your age, which I love. I think that's made it's so exciting to see your success and the role that you play, as you said, advising others who may have more years on you. I throughout my career remember distinct points in which I was wondering what I should be wearing right now. There was this one period in time where I was a global head of innovation, and I remember thinking way too hard about this. What does a global head of innovation look like, and what should I be wearing? And then I gave up on that because I'm helpless, and I've gone to the sort of the black T-shirt. There was actually, for an interesting reason, there was an entrepreneur friend of mine who was extremely successful. And he told me once, this was years ago, that he has so many complex decisions to make throughout the course of a day that anywhere in his life and his daily routine where he can remove a decision, that's giving his brain a rest and a break. And so when he goes to a restaurant, each restaurant he orders one thing, he has that meal at that particular restaurant, doesn't have to make a decision, doesn't have to think about it. And I thought that was fascinating. And so, it's easier if you just have fewer things to wear and you just wear the same thing every single day. So hence black T-shirts.
I agree with that, dude. I do the V. I mean, if it's not this, I'm doing a V-neck, because I've read studies on that too, which is really interesting. You brought that up. Like, you really do have so many creative decisions you can make any given day. So being able to make that just super stupid easy, where I can, whatever, throw on a shirt. Like, surprisingly, this is pretty easy. Find a button down, throw on a sports coat, and don't think too much about it. But the black thing works too. Like, I think it just depends.
It depends just on how lazy you are. So, and I stylishly, this is easier. It's fun. This is exactly where I wanted the show to go, by the way. It's just to talk about my clothing choices and yours. So
welcome to Fashionista.
Exactly. We are right on schedule with the questions that I laid out in my mind. As last one on this topic, though, is I actually tried to do the same for my children, where I decided, and I talked to my wife about this, if we find because kids are picky and never consistently picky. So they'll like one thing and then they'll change and not like that same thing the next day. But if we found a pair of pants that they liked, I was always lobbying for us to just buy 20 of those and not have any other options. And just, I never won out on that argument, but it seemed so much easier in my mind. So,
makes sense to me, bro. It makes sense to me, bro.
Let's get this back to discussing whatever the topic was. So, and we knew we were going to do this, by the way, because we did the same thing on your show and totally geeked out about just the technology we use and the formats we go out over. So you started with passion. You were a hustler. You were born at a time where you had a medium through which to communicate. Did you? And this is again a selfish question, because I'm watching my offspring, my children, grow up exposed to and very comfortable with these YouTube channels that are purely personality driven, right? There is arguably zero meaningful content being shared over these things, but the personalities are engaging, and you take to them and they tell funny stories, and they consume too much of this stuff, especially since we're all quarantining at home. Did you grow up watching whatever was the comparable? I mean, Road Rules or Big Brother or YouTube channels? Like, what were your inspirations for this medium that got you started in it?
Are your kids watching Big Brother?
No. I went older. Yeah, no, absolutely not. Thank you for clarifying that for all the parents out there.
So Ian makes his kids wear the same pants every single day and watch Big Brother. That's what.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No, well, it's interesting you bring that up. In hindsight, like, my upbringing, my family always had me outdoors. I was always, camping, hiking, playing outside. I played video games. I think I was, right in that timeline between social media, where like MySpace was really the first dive into social media that came around really big when I was maybe like 13, 14 or something like that.
Yep.
Don't quote me on that. But I was like right on that kind of border. So like I didn't watch a lot of TV, I guess. Like I did and I didn't. And I wasn't totally encompassed. Like I loved outdoors. I was always outdoors. And I think a lot of the younger generation, there's going to be yin and yang to this, obviously. There's no avoiding it. We're going in that direction. Eventually, we will be talking and meeting. And I believe this is going to be even further progressed with the pandemic and the era that we're in, where a lot of our business meetings will likely take place in virtual reality, where we'll be sitting in a conference room that'll feel like we're all there, or we're at a trade show that feels like we're all there, but we're actually still in our living rooms.
Right.
So it's inevitable we're going that way. There are yins and there are yangs to it, I think. And I think depending on how the parent manages that situation, I'm not sure if I'm addressing your question the right way or if that's exactly what you're trying to get out of it. But
yeah.
Well, is your question more so like the concerns of young children having access to digital channels and social media, or?
No, that's how I do my parenting these days. But no, it was just what made you comfortable doing this, because you really do. I mean, again, having been a guest on your show, and some of this is just personality. It has nothing to do with the medium, but you really gravitated towards it. Because let's pivot from there. First of all, I really do like this idea of the VR AR kind of influence on the way we're going to meet and gather in the future.
100%.
I mean, if you look at business meetings, conferences, also schools, we're going to, at least for the next, no one knows the answer, but it's going to be months and months and months.
We're in a very primitive form of it. Like just having this conversation, we will eventually be able to feel like we're sitting literally across the table from one another. You know, we're talking about Joe Rogan, like Joe Rogan style. Yep. But we won't even actually be there.
Right. Well, and I also think that there's a lot to this idea of us digitizing the old model. So even sort of the meetings and the virtual events we're holding today are really just the old events we held before. Like meetings are still a bunch of people gathering. It's just that we're over video. That doesn't make a meeting any better. In fact, it probably makes it worse. And so we do need to evolve just the construct and the mechanism that we're actually interacting 100%. And engaging. And so, but the technology is there and it's helping us. And it's intriguing to watch every age group, even kids on Zoom calls now doing the same thing.
Doing school. Well, let me address your I actually get this question a lot.
You're not giving up on this question. You're going back. Okay.
No. This is a good transition here, because I get the question. Like, I think one of the things we wanted to touch on was really getting yourself out there. Getting your personal brand. What does that mean? How do you create content? How do you reach people, engage people, stay in front of them, stay consistent? And for me, like, I grew up in the technology era, but man, I was not comfortable on camera in the beginning of doing this. Like, you can literally go to my YouTube page, go down to the very first videos I published there, and I am terrible at it. Like, I was so bad, so awkward. And actually now in hindsight, I have some recommendations that we can dive into probably towards the end on how to get good at that stuff. Yep. But it's just like anything else. Like, I attribute this podcasting. I mean, I'm sure you even experienced this when you first started podcasting, is very awkward, very like you're thinking about it a lot. It's weighing on you. And now it's just natural.
That's kind of you to say. I still think it's more of that former than the latter, but no, absolutely. I mean, I am a firm believer. And now the interesting thing about social at all is, unfortunately, you sort of have to rehearse your craft on stage, rather than
it's
doing
like stand-up comedy. You can't just like do it in a vacuum. And there are some ways, like you can record yourself and watch yourself before anyone even sees it.
Yeah.
But to really get good at it, you have to just put yourself out there.
Yep.
And so many people try to do, I mean, I'm speaking to marketers right now. I'm speaking to sales directors. I'm speaking to just anyone, solopreneurs who is trying to, build a personal brand or do something great or phenomenal and get people aware of it, is the perfection paralysis of trying to make everything. Like, you see the introduction to Ian's show, like, that was evolved from your very first episode. Like, you didn't come out of the gate with that really badass introduction to your show. Like, that stuff was evolved, and so is everything else. So luckily we live in the world where like you really can be imperfect, and like CEOs of billion-dollar organizations are in their underwear right now on a Zoom call talking to their entire 30,000 people staff or whatever.
Yeah.
And we live in that era where like the man behind the curtain is moved away, and that gives you so much more permission to be able to be imperfect, get yourself out there. I'm just like hard-headed. So I'm just going to do this, and I'm just going to stay consistent with it. And I started really putting myself out there a number of years ago. The first couple of years, like it just felt like I was just talking to the vacuums of space.
Yep.
And now to where I'm at today, like, man, we could really speak on that as well. Do you want me to talk about starting my first podcast at all? Like, do you think that would be helpful?
I'd love to hear it, and then I want to take us through some of the folks you work with, the advice you give them, and just the personality types. Because to your point, just the I guess the hurdles people sort of artificially put in front of themselves. That really is around that sort of paralysis based on perfection. And as you said, just rehearsing and getting better on stage, just like a comedian would do, and trying out new material. But take us through your podcast.
So well, it's interesting because podcasting is amazing. Every business needs to have a podcast, just like every business needs a blog. It's just another vehicle for communicating your message in a way that some people consume by reading, some people are watching video, some people are listening to podcasts. And so I really try to accommodate, not myself, like what I want to do. I try to accommodate other people and how they're going to listen to me. But about the same time when I had initially left out of college, I was either going to start another business, or my dad had actually had this legacy content marketing agency that had been around already for over 14, 15 years at this point in time. And I was really passionate about it. All of his clients were B2B, and it was just kind of like a lifestyle business, and things were really great until I came and screwed it all up. No, I'm just kidding. But I saw the big vision of it, and a couple things at this point in time. First off, I didn't come from a very I came from a very average, below, I guess, lower middle class family. Not tons of connections. Nobody I knew was going to really fancy schools, or my parents didn't meet their friends at like Harvard or anything like that. Like that just wasn't the lifestyle I grew up in. It was very like just getting by. And so when I got to this point where I'm like, okay, I really want to start doing some big things and getting to know people and change lives. And I want to, every day I write down, I'm going to help 100,000 people this year, or 200,000 people this year. And I keep growing that every year. I knew that I couldn't do that in a vacuum. And I knew at 13, when I was studying people and reading books like Think and Grow Rich, that nobody out there, Ian, anyone who you see or would consider successful, whether it's health, it's wealth, it's relationships, did that alone, did that in a vacuum. So I'm setting myself like, there are some great people that I need to surround myself by. Like my friends from high school, my circle isn't enough to expand my horizons the way that I want. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I can't just go approach these people and just go ask for their time. What are some other ways that I can build a relationship that would add value and would allow me to get my foot in the door with people that may seem kind of unreachable to many others? And I'm like, well, a show. And this was about 4 years ago at this point, actually. And I was like, why not a show? Because I can do a couple of things. Is I can get to know people. They'll know my business. I'll tell them passively what I do for my business as well. And I'll be able to get these relationships, and I'll be able to get mentors. And so that's where I'm like, well, other people need that too. So both of my podcasts that I've founded now are built around that premise of mentorship and surrounding yourself. Like if you want to be the best rock salesman in the world or the best artists, like you have to find the person who's winning at that and be able to surround yourself and absorb their information and learn from them. And it's the most important, profound, game-changing thing that I've ever done in my life. And anybody, no matter where you're at in your life and your career, can do it as well.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the show, it's both. Hopefully, it's helpful to an audience, but I think that the best shows are ones where the host is somewhat selfishly going on a journey of discovery and interacting with and learning from guests in a way that they would do even if no one was listening. And again, it's why I was fascinated by our discussion on your podcast, and I was excited to have this one just because, even if no one was listening, and we know this because we've had discussions where no one else was listening, we would have a lot of fun and we'd get something from this discussion, and it enables you to build a brand as a pretty cool byproduct, and something that you've done really well is build that brand.
The byproduct is like it's a snowball. It's a total snowball. Like it feels very daunting and it's small and it's just this little thing, and then you just start rolling it down the hill, and then all of a sudden it gets big enough that it just starts compounding and building onto itself, where like outside forces are being drawn in, and then it's got its own gravitational pull and everything like that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, so let's. What I had originally planned was sort of a longer form question and answer session, is going to become more of a speed round because there's a lot I want to ask you. And while I'm doing that too, I'll also mention to anyone listening, if you do have any questions for Connor on any level of how do you build your brand, how do you get started, what sort of tech and media should you use, do share those questions. We'll pop them up on screen and answer them. I will get us started. So I guess give us context of who do you work with, who do you help on this journey to build brands, and just quickly, because then I got a whole bunch of questions based on that.
Yeah, well, our services we help our actual services, we help a really select group of businesses that are in that mid-market space where they don't have the now we work with Fortune 500 companies and everything, but really those businesses that are trying to they're stuck, they're stagnated, they're trying to break from, maybe 20 to 30 and then 30 to 60 million in that range. And the only limiting factors for most every single business nowadays, you could have literally the best product and service in the world, but if you're not able to do two things, number one, reach enough of the right people, you're not going to grow your business. And number two, consistently be able to stay in front of them, you're not going to be able to grow your business, because we're fighting Corona noise. We're fighting all the negativity in the news cycles. We're fighting other sellers, other businesses, other marketing. We're fighting an uphill stream of noise and everything. And so we have to show up more than ever. Now, here's what I found, which is really interesting too, is I use Instagram, I use Twitter, I use my podcast, I speak very regularly at events. I get interviewed on other podcasts. I've had people who are just starting out, entrepreneurs, and they're starting a clothing brand, or I've had conversations with someone, they just started a coffee company, and they just consume my content and find value in it. So I like to really think that I'm helping anyone who's willing to help themselves and take action on the information, because when people are able to take action on the stuff I tell them, they see results very, very, very quickly. Yeah.
No, that's outstanding. First, and I do want to shout out to Dr. Scott Davies, who is an awesome guest awesome viewer, listener of the show. Thank you, Scott. He said that he learns a lot from both of us, probably more so you than me, but thank you, Scott, for your comments and for listening.
Scott is literally one of my favorite guys. Right? I mean, he is the kindest human, so intelligent, and shout out to you, man. I thank you for being such a great supporter.
Yep. So, okay. Totally agree. First of all, because I was there. I was co-founded a technology advisory consultancy firm, and we needed to rise above the din and the noise. You mentioned all the reasons why it's hard to be seen right now, and I mean you alluded to it, but I always found one of the biggest challenges was just the general just buzz and noise that was just numbing of all the same vocabulary words that lost meaning a long time ago. So nobody knows what anyone does anymore. You just sort of write this the buzzwords on your website and then all of your copy. And there's also fatigue going on right now. People have watched lots of Zoom hosted webinars, et cetera. So you got to just be different. You got to rise above. So completely agree with that. Now, you'd mentioned in those organizations, there's a value in having content out in the form of blogs and podcasts. Now, blogs can be a little bit more anonymous or faceless, if you will. I mean, you can come out from the company. But when you move to podcast, vodcast, whatever it is, all of a sudden there has to be a human. There has to be a person who is that host, who is the regular coordinator and facilitator of those discussions. Do you have a point of view on who that person should be in an organizational structure? Should it be the CEO? Should it be the head of marketing? Should it just be that person who's just crazy enough to want to grab a mic and do this on a regular basis?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like it's a team effort, and it depends on your goals ultimately as well. Like I'm not tied to a blog or vlog or video or doing a podcast. I'm really a fan of what I call the collaboration funnel, which really enables it for anybody at any skill level, any personality type, to be able to build brand without having to just be the singular voice of it. So if you are doing a blog, if you're doing blogging efforts, for example, guest blogging, like interviewing others to contribute content to you. LinkedIn's a phenomenal platform because a CEO can build brand. Now, here's what's interesting. I've been kind of like back and forth in this. So this is really making me think. I'm really excited about this, of where I'm kind of thinking on this is I always thought like, yes, your CEO, like whoever the owner of the company is, like, that's the guy, like that's who needs to be building brand. I think peer to peer is where the most successful brand building occurs from what I've seen. So let me give you an example. I have a lot of clients who are in cybersecurity, for example, or they're in medical sales of something. They sell medical devices or oil and energy. Let's say one of their key functions in their organization is some sort of, like, I'll go back to the technology role, is like a CTO type function. Like I'm an outsourced CTO guy, right? Or we're an outsourced IT managed company. Well, instead of the CEO of that business, who's likely more of a salesperson, they may be the actual internal CTO or the internal tech minded person. The person in that company who is that tech minded person should be building brand for their prospects, for their clients, because then they're going to perceive it much more peer to peer. Like I'm learning valuable information from another peer of mine, rather than, oh, this is another company trying to market content to me. And that is the field too. Well, let's definitely talk about that. Content is currency for your social media marketing and all your digital channels. But the delivery channel through a personal brand is the most profound way to go about it, because sales at the end of the day is not B2B. It is P to P. It's people to people. It's human to human.
Right.
So if you can find people in your organization who match the personality criteria and the peer affiliation with your actual buyers, then that's where people are really starting to see a lot of traction in their personal branding efforts.
Yep. Love it. No, absolutely agree. 1,010%, although that's not mathematically useful.
Maybe in another
on a lot of
universe.
different levels, just because you're right. It's why in the beginning of this show, and not to plug it, but it's just because it resonated as you were speaking. The Sykes Production sort of media machine now has other hosts, and we have one, Orlando Haynes, who talks about careers and career development. And as you say, that's it. That is an expert talking about his field. It resonates on an organization because at the end of the day, in our type of business, what we are is really talent, right? We are good people taking care of an enterprise's customers, and you want the best people that we can find taking care of your customers. And so to have him be the spokesperson and have him be the host of that show is absolutely the only way to pull that off, because it couldn't be me. I couldn't do that. And the CEO, as you say, sometimes the CEO isn't. The CEO has their particular role and position in branding an organization, but you want to see the experts in their craft be the ones that are pontificating on and exploring topics. Okay,
100%.
so I'm going.
To tack onto that too, like I think, and this kind of circles back to what we talked on earlier, is like you don't have to be like a grand personality. Like I am the way I am because of my background and habits. Like that's just me. But I personally study other people who nobody else knows who the heck they are, because they aren't that personality, but their information is dynamite, and their podcast is dynamite, and their blogs are just like so rich in information. And I get so much value, but that person is not a media personality. So don't think because you see Ian, he's got the personality, or me, or, the guys in our space. Like we talked about the Gary Vaynerchuks of the world. They're like, well, I don't want to go be a cuss on stage. And like, that's not my personality. You don't have to be. If you're really shy, other people associate with that.
Totally agree.
That personality type.
Oh, and I do find myself as a student of every single piece of content that I consume now. So whether I'm watching the news, I'm just staring at the newscasters, just fascinated at, first of all, how they barely move and their eyes are locked on the camera, and they can still be reading from a teleprompter in such a natural way. But you do that, or you're listening to a podcast and you're listening to just intonations and the way that they ask questions and the way that they stop, or the way that they sort of ask a follow-on. It really does. It opens you up and makes you very aware of people who are good at their craft. Okay, so speed round continuing. So organizations don't necessarily have to have the CEO represent them. They should have experts, because I totally agree. Sales is always between people, not between entities. And so you want that personal relation. Formats. Do you find that you should emphasize podcasts, or should you emphasize blogs or video podcasts, so that you have to see you as well as hear you? And second part of question, monologue or interview format? What do you think? What do you think you've seen work the best?
Yes. Next question.
Beautiful. Love it. No, I totally agree. I think they're all useful.
Now, here's where this scares the crap out of people is I can't keep up with that. This is kind of a way that formalizes it and makes it really, really easy. And I'm about to give some very simple steps for you, is whether it is like, if you're good at writing, or your company has the capabilities for writing, or you're good at doing podcasting, which is just having a conversation like Ian and I are right now, or video content, or, visual graphic content. First, find the medium that you can stay the most consistent with. Whether you're a solopreneur or you're a multi-billion-dollar organization, find the medium you can be consistent with. And then if I am good at podcasting, for example, well, it's as easy as hopping on a call on StreamYard or Zoom, having a conversation, having a solo conversation, if that's the way I want to do it, taking that audio, using that for podcasts, transcribing it, using that as my blog post, taking the video I'm recording right now. And I have from the interview that Ian and I are doing today, just having a conversation, I have 500 pieces of content from this alone. Yep. So when I say the answer is yes, people all consume differently, and you need to kind of accommodate that nowadays, but you don't have to get overwhelmed in thinking you have to create everything. Create one thing that you can be consistent with, and then you can break it down from there in some very, very easy steps.
Totally agree. No, I absolutely agree that there's a content pyramid, if you will, and that's why I like this format. That's why I like live, because you don't overthink it. It's, what's the worst we could possibly do? It's not going to go off the rails that much.
Well,
yeah, okay, fair enough. Hopefully, and get it back on the rails. But then, as you said, you've got content both in the video format. You can piece this or chop this up into small pieces. You can turn some of it into a written format. You can just do memes. I mean, there are an infinite number of ways that you can use this content and continue to use it, because to your point, you need to get your brand out, but you need to be consistent. You need to be nurturing those interactions and staying top of mind. Every piece of content, or every interview, every discussion, every podcast you do can stay in the ether and be bumping against potential consumers of that content, and then ultimately potential customers of your organization, if you allow it to. So
okay. And something sorry, go. If you want to ask your question, but something that I think is really important here too is I've kind of changed my perspective on this just a little bit, because yes, you kind of need everything, but again, that's overwhelming. But now with lack of travel, events, trade shows, conferences where we do face-to-face and build that know, like, and trust factor, which is what doing business with other people is about. Do I know you? Do I like you? Do I trust you? That is how you do business. That's how you close sales.
Yes.
Video is a great way to do that. And so I have lots of great tips on doing video in a way that's very easy. Doesn't require you to start a podcast or do a bunch of production or get fancy with it, but can enable you to build that know, like, and trust factor. But I'm sorry, I didn't go ahead. This is probably the slowest speed round, and I'd like to go on these big, grandiose conversations.
As Katrina Demling said in the comments, that if the show does go off the rails, fake a technical difficulty. So thank you, Katrina. The always creative ideas from you. I want to. Last few minutes, I want to read some names of folks who did join us and thank them for doing so. But then I want to ask you one last question. I'll also make the point that everything that you're mentioning here will put as links and notes in the show notes, as far as links to active blogs, into the B2B Mentors, and to your other content, Connor, because you really are natural and a master at this craft. And there's no doubt that you add value, and there's no question that you can help and are helping organizations master this medium. So before I get to the last question, Maria from Colombia, welcome. Nick Ryan from Atlanta. Wow. Kedwin from Mill Valley. Kedwin, we got to talk. Hassan from London. Hassan, how are you, sir? Thanks for joining the show. Sue Hughes from Florida. Dr. Scott Davies, of course, thank you again for being a regular listener. Orlando Haynes, host of the new Career Talks, a Sykes production. Orlando, thanks for joining. Katrina, with your incredible suggestion of technical difficulty. Okay, so last question, Connor, and I think marketing in general struggles with this, so I want to hear your perspective on it. What is success? How do you measure success of all of this effort? If you bust your tail and you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and you put out blogs or video podcasts or what have you, how do you measure if it's working?
Yeah, great question. And I remember you and I really talking about this too, and having a real interesting dialogue. It's fascinating, because I think depending on where everyone's level of understanding of digital marketing is, will determine how they measure success. Okay. So, if you're doing this, it's not about just mindlessly doing it because it's nice and fun, which is great if you enjoy it. But at the end of the day, like, sales matter, especially if you're doing this on behalf of your company and your business development efforts and your, sales and marketing efforts. So I measure success by sales. I very closely in monitoring, like, okay, I did a podcast with Ian. I posted it out on LinkedIn. These were the people that engaged with it. I got these people scheduled on my calendar that I saw came in through my LinkedIn funnel and closed into a sale. And that's really like, that's ultimately the end all be all of this, is bringing new business in the door. Now, here's where a lot of people get hung up is it is a building process. It is like a snowball effect. It starts small. It's not like if you do trade shows, sometimes it takes years of showing up at trade shows and industry events before you really start getting recognition. The same applies with digital channels, which is why you can't wait around. You got to jump on it. So measuring success, I don't measure in likes and comments. And yeah, I keep track of views and I keep track of podcast downloads, and those are good figures, and like those are secondary. Mm-hmm. Like, and I don't recommend my clients really measure success on that either. I measure digital success on people who are opting into our webinars, downloading our going through our funnels that are taking them from these platforms and bringing them closer in to our other bits of information. That is how I measure digital marketing success. So growing your list, growing your audience, and direct sales. And that's the thing too that a lot of people forget. Like back in the day, what was the deal with, like, if you're going to have a successful business, you need a large what? Can anybody drop in the comments? Anyone know? You need a large email list. That was the thing. Like if you had the biggest email list, like you were the biggest hotshot business in town. Yeah. Well, your social media following, your podcast listeners, your viewers, they're your email list. Yeah. And they don't just like see you and then buy from you right away. They see you show up, provide value, education, nurture, and then at some point in time, a year from now, 2 years from now, they take action.
Yeah. There you go. No, you're absolutely right. And it is creating that community, treating them with respect, sharing and exploring with them. I mean, that's ultimately what this is sort of a journey of exploration. For me, as I said, that's somewhat selfish. I get to speak to really cool people like yourself and learn from them.
Can I say something too? You are leading the way. Like there is nobody out there in these other companies your size that are literally building a media company that is, it's like someone would look at what your business does and be like, huh, doing podcasts? Like what? I'm not even going to say specifics, but I can guarantee 5 years from now, because of what you're laying down right now, is going to be monster for Sykes and Sykes Enterprises from a recognition, from a media perspective. And so like, I'm so appreciative of you leading the way and what a lot of these organizations should have been doing 10 years ago, started 10 years ago, probably.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. Like I said, it is, for some, it's just a personal passion that just happens to coincide with something useful. And so I think I found myself in that intersection where I really do love doing this and have for a long time. And I appreciate the kind words. So much so that I'm going to end the show there on that personal high note. But again, we could go on forever, and perhaps we'll have another show, and I'll have you back on, because I'd love to pick your brain on more tips and tricks and best practices and just funny anecdotes. But for the time being, Connor, thank you for joining OneTAKE. Thank you to everyone who's listening. I hope you found this as interesting and compelling as I did, just because I think everybody has stories in them. Everybody has content they can share. Everybody has, if they have a passion for it, they have an audience out there that's ready to listen. And Connor, man, you're a star. I can't. Already you've achieved so much. I look forward to seeing all the more that you achieve in your career. And let's stay in touch. I'll put links to all of Connor's content in this show. And like Connor and I talked about, you will see this come back at you in memes, in short clips, and telegraphs in the very near future.
Carrier pigeons.
Carrier pigeons. You do not see, that is an underutilized social media format, and we're bringing it back. Everybody heard it first here. I think they may be extinct, actually. I think they wiped them out. Yeah.
The carrier pigeons?
We'll
find some. We'll train them. I think
they wiped them out in like World War I. I'm gonna go check this out.
We're gonna start a side biz and train up some carrier pigeons for the new marketing era.
Brilliant. This cannot go wrong. So okay, you heard it. You heard it here first, folks. Connor, thanks a million. Thanks everyone for listening. And with that, we will end the show. Have a great day and stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, brother.